I'm reading a story by Haruki Murakami in his book First Person Singular. The title of the story is called On a Stone Pillow. I would like to tell a story about a woman. The thing is, I know next to nothing about her. I can't even remember her name or her face. And I'm willing to bet she doesn't remember me either. When I met her, I was a sophomore in college, and I'm guessing she was in her mid-20s. We both had part-time jobs at the same place at the same time. It was totally unplanned, but we ended up spending a night together and never saw each other again. At 19, I knew nothing about the inner workings of my own heart, let alone the hearts of others. Still, I thought I had a pretty good grasp of how happiness and sadness worked. What I couldn't yet grasp were all the myriad phenomena that lay in the space between happiness and sadness, how they related to each other. As a result, I often felt anxious and helpless. That said, I still want to talk about her. What I do know about her is that she wrote tanka poems and had published a book of poetry. I say published, but the book was actually a pamphlet-like volume that barely rose to the level of a self-published book, composed of printed pages bound with a string and a simple cover attached. But several of the poems in her collection were strangely unforgettable. Most of her poems were about love between man and woman, or about death, almost as if to show that love and death were concepts that could not be separated or divided. Like, you and I, are we really so far apart? Should I maybe have changed the trains at Jupiter? When I press my ear against a stone pillow, the sound of blood flowing is absent. I might use another man's name when I come. Are you okay with that? She asked me. We were naked under the covers. I'm okay with that, I guess, I said. I wasn't totally sure, but I thought it probably wouldn't bother me. I mean, it's just a name. Nothing's going to change because of a name. I might yell pretty loud. Well, that could be a problem, I said hurriedly. The ancient wooden apartment I lived in had walls as thin and flimsy as one of those wafers I used to eat as a kid. It was pretty late at night, and if she really screamed, the people next door would hear it all. I will bed down on a towel then, she said. I picked up the cleanest, thickest towel in the bathroom, brought it back, and laid it next to the pillow. Is this one okay? She bit down on the towel, like a horse testing a new bit. She nodded. The towel passed muster, apparently. It was totally a chance hookup. I hadn't particularly been hoping we would get together, and I don't think she had been either. We had worked at the same place for a couple of weeks, but since the work we did was a little different, we hardly ever had any chance for a decent conversation. That winter, I was washing dishes and helping out in the kitchen of a down-market Italian restaurant near Yasuya Station, and she worked there as a waitress. All the part-timers were college students except her. Maybe that's why she seemed a bit aloof. She decided to quit that job in the middle of December, and one day after work, Some of the employees went to a nearby izakaya for some drinks. I was invited to join them. It wasn't exactly a full-blown farewell party, just us drinking draft beer, having some snacks, chatting about various things. I learned that before she waitressed, she had worked at a small real estate agency and at a bookstore. In all the places she worked, she explained she never got along with the managers or owners. At the restaurant, she didn't have any arguments with anyone, she explained, but the pay was too low for her to get by for long, so she had to look for another job. Not that she wanted to. What kind of job do you want to get? Someone asked. I don't care, she said, rubbing the side of her nose. I mean, whatever I wind up with isn't going to be all that great anyway. I lived in Asagaya at the time, and her place was in Kogane, so we rode the high-speed train together on the Chu line out of Yotsuya. We sit down side by side in the train. It was past 11 p.m., a bitterly cold night, with a biting wind. Before I had known it, we were in the season where you needed gloves and a muffler. As the train approached Asagaya, I stood up, ready to get off, and she looked up at me and said in a low voice, If it's okay, would you let me stay at your place tonight? Okay, but how come? It's too far to go all the way back to Kagane. I have to warn you, it's a tiny apartment and a real mess, I said. That doesn't bother me in the least, she said, and took the arm over my coat. So she came to my cramped, crummy place, and we drank some cans of beer. We took our time with the beer, and afterward, like it was a natural next step, she shed her clothes right in front of me, just like that. She was naked and snuggled into my futon. Following her lead, I took off my clothes and joined her in bed. I switched off the light, but the glow from the gas door kept the room fairly bright. In bed, we awkwardly warmed each other up. For a while, neither of us said a word. So quickly naked with each other, it was hard to know what to talk about. But as our bodies gradually warmed up, we literally felt the awkwardness loosen up through our skin. It was an utterly intimate sensation. That's when she asked, I might use another man's name when I come. Are you okay with that? Do you love him? I asked her, after I had gotten the towel ready. I do, a lot, she said. I love him so much. I'm always thinking of him, every minute. But he doesn't love me that much. What I mean is he has a girlfriend. But you're seeing him. He calls me whenever he wants my body, she said, like ordering takeout over the phone. I had no clue how to respond, so I kept quiet. She traced a figure on my back with her fingertips. Or maybe she was writing something in cursive. He told me that my face is plain, but my body is the best. I didn't think her face was particularly plain, though calling her beautiful was going too far. Looking back on it now, I cannot recall what kind of a face she had exactly, or describe it in any detail. But if he calls, you go. I love him, so what else can I do? She said, like nothing could be more natural. No matter what he says to me, There are just times when I'm dying to have a man make love to me. I considered this, but back then it was beyond me to imagine what feelings this entailed for a woman to want a man to make love to her. Loving someone is like having a mental illness that's not covered by health insurance, she said in a flat tone, like she was reciting something written on the wall. I see, I said, moved by her words. So it's okay if you think of some other woman instead of me, she said. Don't you have anybody you like? Yeah, I do. So I don't mind if you yell that person's name when you come. It won't bother me at all. There was a girl I liked at the time, but circumstances kept us from getting more deeply involved. And when the moment arrived, I didn't call out her name. The thought crossed my mind, but in the middle of sex it seemed kind of stupid, and I ejaculated inside the woman without a word. She was about to yell a man's name, like she said she would, and I had to hurriedly stuff the towel between her teeth. She had really strong, healthy-looking teeth. Any dentist would be properly impressed. I don't even remember what name she yelled. All I recall is that it was some nothing, run-of-the-mill name, and that I was impressed that such a bland name was, for her, precious and important. A simple name can sometimes really draw a person's heart. The next morning, I had an early class where I had to submit a major report in lieu of a midterm. But as you can imagine, I blew it off. We finally woke up in the late morning and boiled water for instant coffee and ate some toast. There were some eggs in the fridge, so I boiled them for us to eat. The sky was clear and cloudless, the morning sunlight dazzling, and I was feeling pretty lazy. As she munched on buttered toast, she asked me what I was majoring in at college. I was in the literature department, I said. Do you want to be a novelist? She asked. I'm not really planning to, I answered honestly. I had no plans whatsoever at the time of becoming a novelist. I had never even considered it. With this, she seemed to lose interest in me. Not that she had much interest to begin with, but still. In the light of day, I could see that her teeth marks were imprinted on the towel, and it struck me as a little bizarre. She must have bitten down on it pretty hard. In the light of day, she seemed out of place. It was hard to believe that this girl, small, bony, with a not-so-great complexion, was the same girl who, the night before, had screamed out passionately in my arms in the winter moonlight. I read Tanka poems, she said after the blue. Tanka? You know Tanka, right? Sure, I said. Even someone as naive as me knew that much. But this is the first time I have met someone who actually reads them. She gave a happy laugh. But there are people like that in the world, you know. Are you in a poetry club or something? No, it's not like that, she said. She gave a slight shrug. Tanka are something you read by yourself, right? It's not like playing basketball. What kind of tanka? Do you want to hear some? I nodded. Really? You're not just saying that? Really, I said. And that was the truth. I was curious. I mean, what kind of poems would she write? This girl who, a few hours before, had moaned in my arms and yelled another man's name. She hesitated. I don't think I can recite any here. It's embarrassing. And it is still morning, but I did publish a kind of a collection. So if you really want to read them, I will send it to you. Could you tell me your full name and address? I jotted down my address on a piece of memo paper and handed it to her. She glanced at it, folding it in four, then stuffed it in the pocket of her overcoat. A light green coat that had seen better days. On the rounded collar was a silver bruise shaped like a lily of the valley. I remember how it glistened in the sunlight that was streaming in through the south-facing window. I know next to nothing about the flowers, but for some reason I have always liked the lilies of the valley. Thanks for letting me stay over. I truly didn't want to ride back to Kogine on my own, she said as she was leaving my place. That happens with girls sometimes. We were both well aware of it then, that we would probably never see each other again. That night she simply didn't want to ride the train all the way back to Kageni. That's all there was it. And that's the part one of this story. I don't know where the story goes, but I would stop here.